All right. Well, I'm getting this thing started here. Actually, yeah, my new job, I've been using Visual Studio. I think I told Ken that before. Visual, yeah, Studio 2015. It's an IDE. It's pretty helpful in general. So, all right. Can everybody see that? Hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So, like many fire hosers, the bulk of my professional experience is not in web development. I have had jobs in retail, sales, recruiting, warehouse management, and have also owned my own business before. I'm also a big urban gardener. So, as a lifelong learner, I think it's easier to learn things if you apply new ideas and concepts to some sort of a framework. I'm going to use some basic gardening concepts because I'm comfortable with that to illustrate a few things about interviewing. So what do I know about interviewing? Quite a bit, actually. In addition to my own hiring of employees as an entrepreneur, these are some stats from when I was an internal recruiting manager, which kind of blew my mind, actually, when I thought about it and counted the things up. But it's also, since this is a less of a technical talk and more, whoops, too far. Nope. Less of a technical talk and more of a subject-based topic. Here's kind of an overview. My hope is that you take away 1 to 2 nuggets that you can implement immediately the next time you actually have an interview. Just as a precursor here, I think I mentioned that before, I'm not going to cover like the technical part of it, as in like, solving whiteboarding problems. My goal is to simply help you prep for it, be less nervous, kind of overcome the fear part so that you can then get things started where you feel comfortable, and then your fire hose training and you're working with your mentor, your actual knowledge base, that'll take care of the rest. So it's more on the soft skills and the people side of things. So as far as when you think about it, interviews really are an absurd situation. I think we willingly submit ourselves to a borderline offensive and invasive questioning that wouldn't be socially acceptable in any other situation. It's also most often with people that we barely know. So here are some of the trends that I saw in the answers to the survey I posted of what people feel like they need the most help with in regards to interviewing. So for starters, if you want a halfway decent garden, you need to plan out which plants you want to grow and where they should be planted. For an interview, I think you also need to have a plan. For example, some things I know about myself. Number one, I'm not an aggressive or intimidating person by nature. I can be perceived as kind of a pushover or not very outgoing sometimes. I also know that I go off on tangents, make weird comments when I'm nervous or filling space. I like to think out loud if I don't know how to answer something, which is great if you're doing technical problems or solving for those types of questions. But otherwise, it looks kind of like I'm stalling. So for the latest interview, I had my nonverbals do a lot of the work for me. The dress code was professional, so number one, I showed up in a suit and tie, so that helped a lot. I printed a copy of my resume. I typed out 2 pages of questions that I was going to ask if I were interviewing myself, like if I was on the other side of the table, that included examples based upon my experience, notes from the phone interview that I had, and questions that I had wanted to ask at the end. So at the beginning of the interview, I told the interviewer, I had the director of developers and then a team lead present on the other side of the table. So I told him I had kind of organized my thoughts a bit, laid out my papers on my side of the table. Of course, they had no problem with that. I mean, nobody's going to tell you, no, you can't have some form of notes in front of you if it's for like examples and things. So it showed that I am well organized, place a lot of value upon details, and portraying myself very well. So just like having or tying a tomato plant to a trellis or a rope, you can guide the direction of an interview based upon your questions. I think you should absolutely go on offense. You will always be given an opportunity to ask questions, usually several times throughout the interview. The format of any interview naturally allows for questions at regular intervals, regardless of how the interviewer sets it up. So I had written down kind of 3 categories of things. Must-haves in a job, can't stand things, and nice to haves ahead of time, and that allowed me to come up with some very pertinent questions. Things like, well, what do you like about the company culture? If hired, what are current company goals that I would be contributing to? What's your onboarding process? That was pretty big for me. Strengths of the company, and more importantly, honestly, what are areas of improvement that the company has right now? Also, what is a typical day like for one of your developers? So I would say, make no mistake, part of the job of the interviewer or recruiting manager on the other side of the table is to absolutely sell you on why their company is number one. If you give them your must-haves or needs for a job, they will definitely take the opportunity to sell you on it. So that's important because from my own experience, when you're the interviewer, and you switch over to like selling mode, then you start to envision the candidate as part of the team in order to sell things, to sell effectively. So they start putting you in the role already, which of course increases your chances of getting the job. So this last part here, I wanted to share 3 things that stuck in my mind from all the interviews and candidates over the years. Number 1, you may have heard of always be coding. Well, this is always be closing, to coin a sales phrase, soft closing, that is. An interview is a sale on both sides of the table. You are selling yourself, and they are selling the position and their company or team. So in your next interview or phone interview or any interaction that's a process, literally say, what is the next step? It's a clear signal that your questions have been answered. It's a tactful and complex way that you are both interested in the position. You understand you are in a process, and you value their time. So not only do I grow a variety of plants, but it's important to me that most of them are heirlooms. Heirlooms, I think, are authentic, unique, and interesting. Sometimes misshapen, strange, and curious, not unlike myself. So weave your experience and examples into your answers naturally. For instance, you have learned a ton about me personally in this short amount of time already for this lightning talk. Number 1, I'm organized. I have a sense of humor. I have enough confidence and tact to take calculated risks. I love gardening. You've already seen most of what my backyard looks like, and you know about my background and experience without even having to read my resume. So I think you should do the same in an interview when you build rapport throughout. The last piece of advice would be to refactor your answers ahead of time as much as possible. If interested, they'll definitely peel back a layer and ask follow-up questions. So start with a quick 1 to 2 sentence answer that hits your main points. Your experience from Firehose, your best experience example from Firehose is the group chess app if you're applying for a developer position on a team. So a bad example of how to explain the experience when asked would be, I worked on a chess app that was awesome. I built many features of the app, spent a lot of time communicating with my team. We used continuous integration in GitHub. I had to refactor several of my tests and pair programmed every chance that I got. part of the struggle working with my team was having to work around different time zones and working remotely. The project took about 6 weeks. We followed the Scrum and Agile process. And my biggest takeaway was how to read and contribute to code that I didn't write originally. So that stream of consciousness approach is near impossible to follow or make sense of. A better way to explain that would be I worked on a remote team of 5 developers to build a web-based chess application that enforced the rules of chess. We started from scratch. Then provide more details when they ask questions about specific parts of it, or weave it into another one of your answers. To recap, here's what I covered and what the goal of the talk is. Hopefully you took a couple things away. And just like gardening, there are factors beyond your control. So you have to plant a lot of seeds to get the yield that you want. Submit a lot of applications. Be organized about it, and you want to control as many of the variables as possible. Anybody have any questions?
I do. How was it, since you're not working as a Ruby or Rails developer, and I saw that your blog post with the nice halves, and that was nice to have. That was actually a great idea that other people should implement when looking for a job, because they might be surprised at what they find out. Did you run into any issues interviewing or discussing or doing anything like that with your company? Because you're doing the Microsoft stack basically, and
yep.
Did you run into any issues really there?
Honestly, I just it's totally, I've been told before, honesty is the best policy. And I mean, they didn't care that I didn't know C#. I mean, it is an object-oriented language anyways. But you still know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and you used, something that talks to the back end. You're familiar with MVC, model view controller. And more importantly, they were very interested, especially for the position I applied for. It was I'm an associate or an entry-level junior developer. So it literally said 0 to 2 years of experience. So I had no problem just flat out telling them this is the experience that I have. I'm totally open to learning a new language. I'm going to keep using Ruby on the side anyways. I just told them that right at the front.
Cool. Did you struggle with learning the new language, or was it, a little hurdle? But
well, it's week number 2, so
yeah.
So it's it makes for some very interesting blog posts. I did one last week, what the differences between them, and I got a lot more examples. I'm actually using some of the previous Firehose work I did in Ruby and trying to recreate it in C#. So I'm trying to solve the same problems, basically. I did the foobar problem in C#, which actually helped me understand things quite a bit better. So
right.
It's an ongoing process.
Awesome. It's awesome to hear. I like how it's you're transitioning into different language, different stack, and how you apply the same principles to it, and it actually works out really nicely, which is what I always preach. It's it's not that much about the language. You can always switch around and learn new things once you understand how to actually write a good program and solve problems through code. So it's great to hear.
So I have a question. It's not necessarily directly related, but just what does a day at work look like? Like what time do you show up, and just I'm just kind of interested to just hear a little bit about your job.
So I found out, so one of my must-haves was a flexible work schedule. I was totally open to a remote job, or at very least, because I have 2 kids now. One of them is 3 weeks old, and my wife is still in pharmacy school. So I need some flexibility as far as, dropping kid off at daycare or whatnot. Her schedule is going to change kind of every 6 weeks starting in January again. So the core hours are 10 to 2. We usually have a sprint meeting in the morning around 9 a.m. I get there 7:30, 8 o'clock. a lot of people come in early just to like have time where everybody leaves them alone and you can just code for a couple hours. They have, like, there was a developer symposium today where they had like kind of like this, where cool topics, over lunchtime. Usually there's a couple other sprint meetings throughout the day, and then people are working on bugs, or they break it up. They have, I believe it's 6 teams. So different product lines. It's a product-based company, like software as a service company. So if you're on, like, the team that I'm on deals with kind of like HR related stuff. So a heavy part of it is bugs, fixing bugs. Another part is like they're getting ready in their sprint. They committed to, in 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to get this much done. So you're just tackling tasks to make that happen. My job as a new guy is literally just to learn. Like, I'm free to mess with C#. I got all my box up and running. It's a pretty sweet setup. I got 3 monitors on my desk. Standing desk is nice. You're free to do whatever. I brought in coloring books. I sit there and, like, when I'm just maxed out, I just sit there and color for a couple minutes. It's very casual. It's nice.
That's awesome, Dave. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm kind of surprised there's not a ton of questions.
Because it was a solid talk.
I figured everybody would have so many questions about sort of like the path that you took and all that stuff. But really great talk, Dave. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the magical answer, which I was totally looking for when I was in Firehose in the curriculum. Where it's like, I just somebody needs to tell me how to do, how to just ace the technical interview. It doesn't exist. Like,
I think if you connect with somebody too, like,
yeah,
you connect with your interviewers, the technical interview is less of an issue. And I think when you even then, and you're going in for an entry level or associate or even a junior with 1 to 2 year experience, they know that you're not going to be able to answer the questions 100%. So it's more, whenever I interview, especially for technical jobs, when I did it for sysadmin work and everything like that, I focused entirely on making good connections with my interviewer so that they just want to hire me based on my personality versus my knowledge, and then I can learn into the job. And that's pretty much how I landed my job too. So I don't think I've ever landed a job without, making good connection with the interviewer.
Yeah, within, I would say, 10 minutes of the interview starting, lasted an hour. I could tell that they were pretty relaxed. We had more of a conversation than questions. So that was it was very easy to do that. And honestly, like, at least from that experience, like, they were very interested. Everything from Firehose translated very well. So they were genuinely interested about everything that I had accomplished so far. So that was cool.
That's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.